Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. The topic of this 10-minute moan is an excellent piece by Stephen Daisley in the Scottish Daily Mail on Sunday. I'm recording this late on Sunday night, I'll put it out Monday morning for you if you haven't already seen this piece. But it looks at a great theory that Swinny's defence, this is a headline, Swinny's defence of Paul Matheson is act of political skullduggery. An SNP will pay for it at the ballot box, which is quite interesting. The more we see of John Swinney's leadership, the more his appointment looks like a retreat from reality on the part of the SNP, a reversion to the party's political comfort zone. They know John Swinney, they like him, and those who don't at least acknowledge his status as an elder statesman of the SNP. Unfortunately, running the country calls for more than that. It calls for a leader, and Swinney is already showing signs that his first unhappy stint in that role is repeating itself. Last week he boasted, "I'm the most popular political party leader in Scotland. That's a huge advantage to SNP, and we're going to use it." His approval rating is -3, but that is actually the most popular in the polls, which is quite frightening. That he is displaying Nicola Sturgeon hubris on the strength of Angus Robertson numbers does not bode well for the SNP. They might wish to avoid reality, but reality is coming for them. They keep saying that we want a referendum. Well, here's a referendum, and on Independence Day none less, the July 4 general election is an opportunity for Scots to cast their judgment on the party, its new leader in 17 years of nationalist rule. On education, tumbling down the international league tables. On health, which habitually misses its targets for emergency treatment, cancer, mental health and testing. On the worst drugs death record in Europe. On the ferries debacle and the Ferguson Marine saga. On a government that talks big on climate change, then sheepishly drops it. Key targets. Voters will have their say on the damage done to small businesses by a government that has no understanding of the entrepreneurial spirit and no apparent interest in learning. They will let the SNP know how they feel about living in the highest tax part of the UK and the barriers that raises to hiring the best and brightest for top jobs. They will record their contempt for 3 years spent recklessly shackled to the extremist Greens. The minister who couldn't set up a bottle recycling scheme. The threat to ban fishing in some of Scottish waters. The unforgivable decision to delay life-saving upgrades to accident-blighted roads. The public is far from impressed by the nationalists' obsessive focus on gender identity. The Liberal Hate Crime Act. The smug air of Holyrood knows best that clings to everything they do. It is troubled that the governing party has been under police investigation for 3 years now. People are dumbstruck that a party which exclusively claims for itself the mantle of patriotism was willing to put Scots at risk of XL bully attacks just so Scottish Government could be different from Westminster. And, unless John Swinney corrects course, the general election will be a referendum on the Michael Matheson scandal and the First Minister's handling of it. That scandal is a perfect microcosm of the SNP's rule, combining as it does policy incompetence and political skullduggery. Matheson's iPad bill forced his resignation from the cabinet, but it is a scandal in its own right that he had a ministerial post which to resign. His time in government has been marked by ineptitude and terrible decision making, most notoriously as a cabinet minister for justice. That, however, is the way of it in the SNP, who only ever fail upwards. Just as typical of his party is the fact Matheson attempted to cover up his iPad fiasco by making misleading statements to reporters. Secrecy is in the SNP's DNA. When you feel you're entitled to run a country, you are not about to let transparency get in the way. Swinney's decision to oppose the recommended sanction for his mate is nationalist entitlement writ large. Accountability for thee, but not for me. To feign concern to process or principle is pure cynicism. The SNP has never yet allowed either to stand in its way. The only ethic the Nationalists have been bound by in the past 17 years is one that says they can do whatever they want because they have Scotland's best interests at heart. Matheson took a parliamentary iPad with him on holiday, and someone, he says it was his son's, racked up a bill of £11,000 streaming football matches. He then tried to make the taxpayer meet the costs, and may have got away with it if the truth hadn't become public. To all of which John Swinney says, Michael Matheson has suffered significant reputational damage and impact on his family as a consequence of losing office and the difficulties that have been created here. That is what the SNP leader said at First Minister's questions when asked why he was opposing the Standard Committee's recommendations. Who was the author of the difficulties that have been created here? Matheson seems to regard himself as a victim of a terrible injustice, all because he had to pay his own data bill and now faces a suspension. Truly, he's the Nelson Mandela of Falkirk West. While he might feel hard done by, the public thinks the proposed sanction of a 27-day suspension from Holyrood and a 54-day docking of his salary is nowhere near harsh enough. Voters think Matheson should be clearing his desk on the not unreasonable grounds that he would have done so long ago had he tried to pull this stunt in the private sector. I'm told they are spitting tax on the doorsteps. And who are they encountering on the doorsteps? This is a Westminster election, so it will always be a referendum on Nationalist MPs. It has been 9 years since they swept Labour away amid promises to stand up for Scotland and be our voice at Westminster. What exactly have they achieved, other than securing very generous pensions for themselves? Do they feel better stood up for? Can you think of the last thing Scotland's voice had to say for itself in the House of Commons? Even voters sympathetic to the SNP would struggle to cite a single tangible thing its MPs group has done to improve lives in Scotland. Make no mistake, there are few hard-working and honourable nationalist MPs. Think Joanna Cherry and her courageous stand for rights of women and girls, or Stuart MacDonald and his efforts to convince the government China is a threat to the UK. But for the most part, the nationalist section of the green benches is where mediocrity goes to find gainful employment. The voters might be about to change that. The SNP is more trouble than it realises. An uninspiring new leader, a dire record in government, scandal and internal division. This has all the makings of a perfect storm and is heading right for John Swinney and his party. That, I believe, is a fantastic piece by Stephen Daisley of the Scottish Daily Mail. I think as an opinion piece goes, it's spot on. He seems to have his finger in the pulse on what the SNP potential MPs will be receiving in the doorsteps across the length and breadth of Scotland. And I don't think his summary of their 17 years of leadership in Holyrood is far wrong. So, fair play to you, Stephen Daisley. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. But most importantly of all, unless you're Michael Matheson, John Swinney, or any of the cult that want to have the same opinion about Matheson as John Swinney, everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.